Hi everyone, this is Dory, back with another episode of Dory's Helpful Hints. Today I'm going to be talking about wheat, gluten sensitivities, gluten intolerances, and celiac disease. This one's pretty close to me because my mother actually has what you would call pre-celiac. She responds to gluten by making the antibodies. In a blood test, they can test for 2 antibodies. If your body makes them, then you are prone to celiac. They call it pre-celiac. She does not have any damage to her small intestines yet, but her body is creating an immune response to gluten. As they know now, celiac disease is hereditary, and that trait is passed on through families. You can do genetics testing to see if you carry that gene now. They didn't used to, but very recently, one of the genetics companies came out with testing for celiac disease, and I actually carry one of the 2 genes, which gives me a higher likelihood of getting celiac disease than somebody who didn't carry any. My husband carries none, so lucky him. Celiac disease is where your body has an immune response to gluten, and it's a protein found in wheat, rye, and barley. And it can cause absolutely no symptoms. It can cause gastrointestinal distress, and ultimately it damages the small intestines. There's villi in the intestines that absorbs nutrients in your system. And if you have an immune response to gluten, it damages the cilia in your intestines, and it makes it difficult for you to absorb nutrients. So malnutrition is something that occurs in people who have celiac disease. There is no known cure for celiac disease. The only thing you can do is to stop eating things that contain gluten. Even small amounts of gluten, if you have celiac disease, can cause damage to your small intestines. So it's definitely something, if you have celiac disease, that you want to avoid. The best thing to do if you're concerned about it is to have the blood work done to see if you make the antibodies. I do not make the antibodies. I actually did have the blood work done to make sure that I don't. And that's a positive for me. You can develop celiac at any point during your lifetime. But as of a couple of years ago when they tested, I am not making the antibodies for celiac. So although I carry the genetic marker, right now I don't have any indications that I am prone to celiac disease. However, celiac disease is not the only issue with wheat. There are a lot of people who are wheat sensitive. I have a family history of wheat sensitivity. My aunt is sensitive to wheat. I have had examples of wheat sensitivity in my life where I'll have gastrointestinal distress if I eat wheat. I can eat it in small amounts. I said in a previous video that if you eat a food that doesn't agree with you, it takes 3 or 4 days for it to make its way through your system. My aunt had shared that with me. And so if I have wheat, I'll wait 3 or 4 days till it's completely gone, because sometimes it's not eating it once, it's a buildup over time. So if you eat it several days in a row, then your body is going to respond to it. Whereas if you only had a little bit and ate it once, you can be good and still enjoy that food, just not to a larger degree. Wheat sensitivities, again, it can cause migraine headaches. There are a myriad of symptoms that you can get from eating foods that you're sensitive to. And the only way to determine whether or not you have a wheat sensitivity would be to eliminate it from your diet and see how well you do without it. If you react to wheat or gluten, it may not necessarily be the gluten. Wheat and oats especially are sprayed with glyphosate to force them to go to seed. So they don't want to wait the amount of time it would take the plant to seed, and they want everything to go to seed at the same time so that when they harvest, they're getting the biggest yield that they can get from their crops. In order to do that, as a plant dies, if a plant becomes diseased or sick or starts to die for any reason, then it will go to seed in order to preserve itself, its self-preservation mechanism that all life has. And so it will seed so that it can proliferate and send the seeds out. So in order to force wheat and oats to seed all at the same time so that they get the highest yield, they'll spray it with massive doses of glyphosate. And that glyphosate can still be measured in the plant, in the seeds after they make the wheat, and into breads, and you eat oatmeal and oats in foods, they have the highest concentrations of glyphosate because they spray it with massive doses. So it may not be the wheat or the gluten that's causing you an issue. You really need to differentiate, because some people can eat organic bread and be fine, in which case it's not the protein or it's not the gluten in the grain, it's the actual pesticide that it's being sprayed with. So be sure that what you're looking at is an actual reaction to wheat. Remove it from your diet. If you try and add it back, start with organic wheat. If you remove it for 30 to 45 days, which is a good rule of thumb if you're trying to see if you're sensitive to something. And then when you add it back, add organic. And if after a couple of weeks you don't respond to the organic, you're doing fine with it, then go back to non-organic. And if the non-organic causes an issue, then it's not the wheat, it's the pesticide. But there are a lot of facets when it comes to food as far as what you're actually reacting to and what you're not. So to recap, celiac disease is an autoimmune response to the gluten that's in wheat, rye, and barley. And celiac disease actually causes damage to the small intestines. Gluten sensitivity or sensitivity to wheat is not going to damage your intestines, but it could cause gastrointestinal distress and other migraines, other physical issues, but they're not life-threatening and they're not actually damaging your body. They're just making you really, really uncomfortable. If you like this video, please put like and subscribe. Any comments or questions can be placed in the comment section below. The next video that I have coming up is going to be along the lines of sensitivity. I'm going to talk about GMOs, which are wreaking havoc with some of us and causing digestive issues. So I hope you find this video helpful. And again, thanks for your time. See you next week.